Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Natuna Charji and I do videos every week unless I'm too busy to. In this video, we're going to be reading the first 4 pages of Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. So many of you have requested me to do this video about the book reading, and I actually started to come up with an idea for it. So my idea is that I'm going to create this series where I'm going to be reading the first 4 pages of various books that you guys are going to tell me. So you guys can vote in the comments for which book you want me to do next. For this video, I'm going to be doing, as I said, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. I have the hard copy of that book right here. You can get this book at your local library. You can get it on Sora, which is a book reading app. You can get it on Epic, or you can just get it from your school library. So let's get started. Before we get started, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and hit that like button. And now let's get started. So Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince by J.K. Rowling, and illustrations by Mary Grant-Perrin. The Other Minister. That's chapter 1. Chapter 1, The Other Minister. It was nearing midnight, and the Prime Minister was sitting alone in his office, reading a long memo that was slipping through his mind without leaving the slightest trace of meaning behind. He was waiting for a call from the president of a far distant country, and between wondering when the wretched man would telephone and trying to suppress the unpleasant memories of what had been a very long, tiring, and difficult week, there was not much space in his head for anything else. The more he attempted to focus on the page before him, the more clearly the Prime Minister could see the gloating face of one of his political opponents. This particular opponent had appeared on the news that very day, not only to enumerate all the terrible things that had happened in the last week, as though anyone needed reminding, but also to explain why every one of them was the government's fault. The Prime Minister's pulse quickened at the very thought of these accusations, for they were not fair or true. How on earth was his government supposed to have stopped that bridge collapsing? It was outrageous for anybody to suggest that they were not spending enough on bridges. The bridge was fewer than 10 years old, and the best experts were at loss to explain why it had snapped cleanly in two, sending a dozen cars into the watery depths of the river below. And how dare anyone suggest that it was a lack of policemen that had resulted in those two very nasty and well-publicized murders, or that the government should have somehow foreseen the freak hurricane in the West Country that had caused so much damage to both people and property? It was his fault that one of his junior ministers, Herbert Curley, had chosen this week to act so peculiarly that he was now going to be spending a lot more time with his family. A grim mood has gripped the country, the opponent had concluded, barely concealing his own broad grin. And unfortunately, this was perfectly true. The Prime Minister felt it himself. People did really seem more miserable than usual. Even the weather was dismal. All this chilly mist in the middle of July, it wasn't right. It wasn't normal. He turned over the second page of the memo, saw how longer it went, and gave up as a bad job. Stretching his arms before his head, he looked around his office mournfully. It was a handsome room with a fine marble fireplace facing the long sash windows, firmly closed against an unseasonable chill. With a slight shiver, the Prime Minister got up and moved over to the window, looking out at the thin mist that was pressing itself against the glass. It was then, as he stood with his back to the room, that he heard a soft cough behind him. Who could it be, I wonder? He approached nose to nose with his own scared-looking reflection in the dark glass. He knew that cough. He had heard it before. He turned very slowly to face the empty room. "Hello?" he said, trying to sound braver than he felt. For a brief moment he allowed himself to the impossible hope that nobody would answer him. However, a voice responded at once, a crisp, decisive voice that sounded as though it was reading a known statement. It was coming, as the Prime Minister had known at the first cough, from the frog-like little man wearing a long silver wig who was depicted in a small, dirty oil painting in the far corner of the room. "To the Prime Minister of Muggles, urgently meet. Kindly respond sincerely, Sincerely Fudge." "Oh, my bad. Respond immediately, Sincerely Fudge." The man in the painting looked inquiringly at the Prime Minister. said the Prime Minister. Listen, it's not a very good time for me. I'm waiting for a telephone call, you see, from the president of that can be rearranged, said the portrait at once. The Prime Minister's heart sank. He had been afraid of that. But I was rather hoping to speak. We shall arrange for the president to forget the call. He'll telephone tomorrow night instead, said the little man. Kindly respond immediately to Mr. Fudge. Very well, said the Prime Minister weakly. Yes, I'll see Fudge. He hurried back to his desk, straightening his tie as he went. He had barely resumed his seat and arranged his face into what he hoped was a relaxed and unfazed expression when a bright green flame burst into life in the empty grate beneath his marble mantelpiece. He watched, trying not to betray a flicker of surprise or alarm, as a portly man appeared within the flame, spinning as fast as the top. A second later he had climbed out into a rather fine antique rug, brushing ash from the sleeves of his long pin-striped cloak, a lime-green bowler in his hand. "Ah, Prime Minister," said Cornelius Fudge, striding forward with his hand outstretched. "Good to see you again." The Prime Minister could not honestly return this compliment, so he said nothing at all. He was not remotely pleased to see Fudge, whose occasional experiences, apart from being downright alarming themselves, generally meant that he was about to hear some very bad news. Furthermore, Fudge was looking distinctly careworn. He was thinner, balder, grayer, and his face had a crumpled look. The Prime Minister had seen that kind of look in politicians before, and it never boded well. "How can I help you?" So he said, shaking Fudge's hand very briefly and gesturing toward the hardest of the chairs in the front desk. Difficult to know where to begin, muttered Fudge, pulling up the chair and sitting down and placing his green bowler upon the knees. What a week. Had a bad one too, have you? Said the Prime Minister stiffly, hoping to convey by this that he had quite enough on his plate already without any extra helpings from Fudge. Yes, of course, said Fudge, rubbing his eyes wearily and looking mostly at the Prime Minister. I've been having the same week you have, Prime Minister. The Prochdale Bridge, the Bones and the Vance murders, not to mention the ruckus in the West Country. I mean to say, some of your people were involved in those things, were they? Fudge fixed the Prime Minister with a rather stern look. Of course they were, he said. Surely you realize what's going on. I hesitated, the Prime Minister. And that is the end of the first 4 pages of Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. As I said, you can check this book out at your local library on Sora, on Epic, or you can just buy it in your school or borrow it in your school library. I hope that reading the first 4 pages got you attached to this book. The summary of this book will be in the description below, along with all of my links that you need to join me. Also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button once more, and a like on this video would not hurt that much. That is the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!